The new race to the moon is heating up geopolitics in space. Imagine nations competing for resources and prestige as the moon becomes the stage for global ambitions. Viewed optimistically, this could bring scientific, economic, and social breakthroughs and unite humanity. On the global geopolitical chessboard, our pieces are positioning themselves to secure a piece of the pie. But doesn't it also carry risks like conflicts and inequality? Let's take a look at the current status of the key players, their infrastructure programs, landing capabilities, partners, and challenges. My name is Suwan and this is Mars Chronicles. Shall we take off? The United States is leading with NASA and the Artemis program. Artemis aims for a sustainable presence at the moon's south pole, with the controversial Gateway station in orbit serving as a hub. Currently, Artemis 2 is underway. A crewed flyby is planned for April 2026. Astronaut training is currently in full swing for this, and NASA contractors are assembling the orange rocket. It's just like that Spider-Man meme where everyone is pointing at someone else. But Artemis 3 is supposed to bring the first manned landing since Apollo in 2026 or 2027, with SpaceX's Starship as the lander, the so-called human landing system. SpaceX says they can manage to build the human landing system in time, and Boeing and company say they can manage to build the rest of the hardware like the Space Launch System rocket, Orion capsule, spacesuits, and similar things in time. It's already gotten to the point where everyone says they won't be the ones responsible for delays, but rather the others. Uncrewed missions like CLPS from companies like Intuitive Machines are already testing technology with some successes, or IEM-2's partial success with its 2025 landing. The United States has advanced infrastructure, including the Space Launch System rocket and Orion capsule. Partners include European Space Agency for Gateway, JAXA for the rover, Canadian Space Agency for robotic arms, and others like Australia. To strengthen their alliance, NASA has established the so-called Artemis Accords, gathering their partners and supporters around them. As of July 2025, it included 56 countries including Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Challenges include budget cuts, delays due to technical tests, and dependence on private partners like SpaceX and Boeing, whose schedules fluctuate. But political charades can also throw a wrench in the works. China is advancing its Chang'e program with the China National Space Administration. Chang'e 6 brought back samples from the far side of the moon in 2024, with Chang'e 7 and 8 to follow in 2027 and 2028. For more precise exploration of the South Pole, the International Lunar Research Station, a planned moon base, is scheduled to launch by 2030 with Russia as the main partner. China plans to continue unmanned landings and to land the first Chinese astronauts on the moon surface by 2030, supported by their near-Earth space station Tiangong and their Long March rockets. The infrastructure includes robotics for construction and nuclear power for the International Lunar Research Station. In addition, China began opening the sector to private or semi-private actors a few years ago, in order not to be completely dependent on purely state efforts and to have a broader base. This brings resilience and competitiveness. Europe is also trying to build this up right now by rolling out the red carpet for newcomers. The 13 partners, in addition to China itself and Russia, also include countries like Venezuela, Pakistan, South Africa, and Egypt. Challenges include international isolation due to geopolitics, technology transfers, and the pressure to catch up with the United States, which leads to rapid and risky steps. But the Western alliance is under the same time pressure. But anyone who thinks that the aforementioned isolation has brought Zhongguo to its knees is mistaken. That was likely the best outcome for Zhongguo. So, they were forced very early on to develop all their capabilities themselves. That starts with basic infrastructure like universities with relevant disciplines, spaceports, an industrial base, satellites for communication, navigation, meteorology, and Earth observation. Espionage. They are now completely independent from Western infrastructure. The sanctions against Russia since the invasion of Ukraine have put them on a similar path toward greater autonomy. Russia and Roscosmos are falling behind, but it is planning Lunar 26 for 2027 as an orbiter and Lunar 27 for 2028 as a lander. Lunar 25 failed in 2023, which caused delays. Russia is cooperating with China on the International Lunar Research Station for a base by 2035, including a nuclear power plant. Unmanned landings are close, manned ferries are affected by sanctions. The infrastructure is based on Soyuz and Proton, but budget cuts are slowing down their ambitions. Partners are China for International Lunar Research Station and India for Census. Challenges include a lack of cash due to the war, technological losses, and isolation from the West, which severely limits cooperation. By the way, if you want to get space news like this directly in your inbox, sign up for the Mars Chronicles newsletter for free at Mars Chroniken Space. The link is below. India, with its space agency Indian Space Research Organization, is making progress in the Chandrayaan program. Chandrayaan-3 landed successfully in 2023 and Chandrayaan-4 is planning to bring back samples in 2028. Their lunar capsule, Gangayaan, is scheduled to launch unmanned to the moon later this year, in 2025, and with a crew in 2026. Preparations for this are in full swing. India has made a name for itself in the space sector because they can achieve a lot very quickly with extremely little money. Working cheaply and efficiently seems to be even more in the blood of Indians than of the Chinese. Unmanned landings have been achieved, manned ones are planned by 2040. And their achievements so far give little reason to doubt these timelines. Their infrastructure includes Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle and Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle rockets. Partners are NASA for Artemis and Russia for training. When it comes to geopolitics, I always find it highly interesting that nations fight against each other, impose sanctions, and terrorize each other. But on the other hand, they cooperate or at least allow others to work together with their opponents. That always gives me something to think about. But let's get back to India. Their challenges are limited budgets, technological development, and dependence on imports. But India's cost efficiency makes up for a lot. I've already made several videos about India, China, and the United States lunar ambitions. You can find them below in the description. Europe contributes with the European Space Agency to Artemis with a module for the gateway and Lunar View for refueling. No own lunar landers, but participation in commercial lunar payload services and projects like Argonaut. European Space Agency is pursuing unmanned ambitions to the moon, but currently still relies on Artemis to get its astronauts there. Despite the major contributions, it won't be a European but a Japanese astronaut who will be the first non-American. This is expected to happen no earlier than Artemis 4 in 2028. If we factor in the realistic delays, then there won't be any non-American on the moon with Artemis before 2030. When you consider that Europe has a much larger population and industrial base, it's very sad that 700 million people are making themselves dependent on 340 million. Unmanned contributions are ongoing and manned ones are through Artemis, at the earliest, sometime in the 2030s. If the European Space Agency members were to start building the necessary infrastructure for manned moon missions today, it might be ready by the mid-2030s. But for that to happen, we would have to stop stifling innovation by over-regulating everything and labeling ambitious projects as right-wing extremist. Europe relies on Ariane 6 for infrastructure, partnering with NASA on Artemis and companies like Airbus, Thales, and Avion, while DERMIG is under review. There are strong concepts from the private sector here in Europe. But it seems to be much harder to get funding than in the United States, where there appear to be more risk-taking venture capitalists than in Europe. But even that is slowly but surely getting better. Challenges include fragmentation among member states, budget disputes, and dependence on the United States, which hinders autonomy. European Space Agency Chief Joseph Aschbacher turned the agency around 180 degrees after taking office to pave the way for new players. To achieve this, he had to master a delicate diplomatic and geopolitical balancing act, which has now led to the emergence of strong startups with great potential that are putting pressure on established players like the Ariane Group. I've linked a video about the Eurovision European Launcher Challenge in the description. Blue Origin is planning a demo landing mission on the moon with their Blue Moon lander later this year, and SpaceX wants to demonstrate the human landing system capabilities as early as 2026. But whether these timelines are realistic, I'll leave to your own judgment. They have rockets like Starship and New Glenn and are important partners for Artemis. Challenges here are regulation, funding, and technical risks, but innovation and competition drive them forward. Another aspect is the economic implication. Resources like helium-3 or water could be mined, which would change global markets and fuel conflicts and claims. Attention, I'm talking here about resources being mined and used, not about them being brought to Earth. It will be several decades before it becomes economically viable to bring raw materials from space or the moon to Earth. Militarily, the race could lead to tensions, regulated by the Outer Space Treaty. But gray areas exist. And the only ones who really take the treaty seriously are the Europeans, and they're putting themselves at a disadvantage. Scientific cooperation despite rivalry shares knowledge, like with International Lunar Research Station and Artemis. Environmental issues concern lunar sustainability with plans to prevent contamination. Private commercialization is shifting dynamics, but also brings risks like monopolies and power concentration. If you enjoyed this update on space geopolitics, subscribe to Mars Chronicles and give it a thumbs up. Thank you to all our loyal members and patrons. If you also want to become part of the community, you can find all the information below in the description. My name is Serwin. Thanks for tuning in to Mars Chronicles. Per aspera astra.